Hello everyone, today we're going to be taking a look at Atypical. This is a show that has been heavily recommended to me recently, and I thought we would give it a shot. I think a lot of people for their first reaction series typically take a look at things like Avatar: The Last Airbender, but I have seen all of those shows, so we're gonna try something a little bit different. So I guess let's just like hop into it.
I'm a weirdo. That's what everyone says.
Me too.
Sometimes I don't know what people mean when they say things, and that can make me feel alone even when there are other people in the room and frequency.
I do wonder about the connection or like kind of the relationship between things like anxiety and ADHD, ADD, and autism, especially when it comes to stimming, because as someone that has a lot of anxiety, I'm like a leg bouncer, right? So it's interesting to kind of see like maybe some connections or some similarities between some mental health groups.
They'd be willing to donate their brains for research.
Donate my brain?
After you die.
I would.
Oh.
I think this immediately for me kind of brings up like the idea of like organ donation after we die, right? And the fact that we still have like a huge percentage of people that won't donate their organs after they die just because they're like I guess like sacred to them. But like my perspective is like once we're dead, like we don't have any use for them, and the fact that we could like keep somebody else's time here longer just because of like us dying is like it's a little morbid, but I that's kind of like my viewpoint on it.
How?
You just have to put yourself out there.
Out where?
I think this brings up another really great idea and point is that like people that might traditionally struggle with things like relationships or dating, so like whether you have a disability, mental or physical, you know, it's a very keen reminder that everyone kind of exists and not everything is as like smooth or sidewalked out for everyone.
It has 90% of the world's ice, but it's considered a desert because the annual rainfall is only about 8 inches.
Oh, I didn't know that.
You wouldn't think it was a desert when you looked at it. That's why I like it. It's not what it looks like.
You know what else is a desert? Do I have to say it?
In bulk, 100% cotton, and they switched them to something that they called tri-blend.
Oh, I just want to comment on that. I am one of those people that likes to buy like my same clothing in bulk. Like once I find a t-shirt or pants or a sweatshirt that I really like, I'm like, I want 10 of these.
Gets to get it, that's fine.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Kinda is. I don't care, I'll be dead.
Can we please stop
Yeah,
talking
Sam's
about
got
being dead?
the same
Not going
idea,
anywhere.
right? Like,
Julia thinks that I should put myself out there and find someone to have sex with. Well, she didn't say.
she didn't say that exactly. So I'm wondering if that's how he's interpreting it. But I love openings. I hope this is good. This theme is so catchy. I just also want to talk about, I relate to Sam a lot just in this one scene where he's walking through the crowd. I'm always wearing headphones. Always, like constantly, even if I'm not listening to anything, just to like cut out the noise of the world.
Banged a veterinarian I met online last night. She had a pet parrot there.
What? Excuse me?
Repeated everything she said. Do me brown sugar! Do me brown sugar!
It's a little racist.
I think she's racist.
What kind of parrot was it?
Oh, I don't know, the red rainbow one?
Don't
That's a scarlet macaw.
like don't parrots live for like forever?
Do you like dating girls?
Yeah, dude, I like dating girls.
I think so he'd like something else more than the dating part. Oh,
What are you doing?
gotta get that. So I work as a photographer and a videographer, and that like I'm just like raise your webcam up higher. A nice like just above eye level.
I surprised him with Mets tickets. Remember that?
Yeah, I do.
I wanted us to just have one thing in common. Just one thing. Me and my dad used to go to the ball games all the time. I think that's all right that Sam's gonna try to date. I mean, you and I...
That hits a little hard. I can understand the frustration of like wanting to have a shared interest with a parent or even like as a child having a shared interest with your parents, and oftentimes I think maybe parents are the ones that want to have more of a shared interest with their child or have the same interests. And I've noticed like with my own parents, like we don't really share any similarities in terms of like our interests. So I think growing up that made it hard. So I can understand like his frustration here. I think I'm interpreting this as a frustration. I'm feeling some marital problems between these two, like a lot of tension, and maybe some of it has revolved around like their focus on Sam so much, right? Like that could be like, not saying that's like the root cause, but I think that definitely seems like a contributing factor towards why there's some tension between these two.
I have a patient who came up with 95 ways to cook an egg.
One of the things that's really kind of brings up is the fact that like just because you experience similar things, symptoms, or if you have the same or similar behavior to things like autism, right, doesn't mean you have autism, or you could be on the spectrum. But I kind of want to separate the two a little bit, right? Because you can experience similar things, but they're not as constant or as intense as someone with a neurological difference, right? And I relate to a lot of like similar things that I think that are typical autistic traits, but not to the like severity or the intensity that we see in media.
Sam said you spoke to him about dating.
She seems really
Well, he
overprotective.
mentioned wanting a girlfriend.
This is a little out of
I
line.
appreciate you're trying to help, but dating is almost entirely nonverbal communication.
I think she's projecting a little bit here, right? Like she's projecting the things that Sam is in a struggle with, or projecting how she imagines he would struggle onto him before he's even like taken a chance to like dip his toe in the dating world.
I don't want to push him. I mean, relationships are hard enough for neurotypicals.
It's interesting that she mentioned not pushing him, but it really seems like she's pulling him.
Sorry. Thank you for your time.
It really does seem like therapy would be good for her, though.
I like research.
Sam really likes Blue.
Something like, baby, those some serious bug eyes you got. Trust me, brother.
This is awful.
Quickest way to get a chick on your dick.
I heard that right?
I examine as many sources as possible.
Yo, this is calling to me.
Who says that? Do people say that?
Yo, Sammy. Right over there is making
I love how Saeed just like floated in.
What about her?
Dude, she's smiling right at you.
Her wardrobe is impeccable, by the way.
Oh.
It's a bit much.
Wow,
Oh, poor Sam.
you scared her away from across the store. Impressive range, dude.
That's okay, Sam. I scare people away from my phone. Did I do something to Sam's locker? Oh, different person. This is kind of a trope that I don't enjoy in just like any form of media, is this like really over the top bullying. Because usually, like, I'm sure something to this degree may happen, but I've never witnessed anything close to this that wasn't just like fictionalized or like really overblown. Nice. The absolute correct response. I love the like nonverbal communication there with her eyes.
Well, you were the one picking on the fat kids.
I had a pudgy friend. Besides, Bailey.
Wow, there's so much to unpack there. Wow, that's the I had a pudgy friend is very close to I have a black friend, right? If we're comparing this to like racism. Mom's an interesting character.
Over and over and over.
I really love this kind of back and forth going on with Sam kind of being in, I'm assuming, therapy or his session, kind of like narrating his life a little bit. I think it's a really unique dynamic that works in this, because I usually don't like narration, but I think it works.
Twat. Twat. Twat, 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 twat.
I think it does a really good job of highlighting like an inner monologue, and especially as a character like Sam who has autism, I think this is like a very accurate representation.
Twat, 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 twat. Twat. Twat.
Because he's just kind of like zoning everything out.
Twat.
Yeah.
Twat.
Listening to the background, why does it matter that she's pretty? Because beauty is kind of everything. And, you know, the amount of studies that have been out saying that like more attractive people can like get away with more things and tend to get more things just because they're attractive.
I'm gonna go for a run. Can I run when I'm grounded, Warden?
You know what? I'm done. You deal with her.
Go ahead.
This is really interesting too. Typically, like there's an interesting dynamic here between like the good cop, bad cop parenting and the fact that like the dad is the good cop this is really interesting because I think usually it's portrayed the other way around, right? Where like the law enforcement portion of the family is like really strict and they've kind of switched that subversion around on us. So I like that.
Awesome.
Great. Now I'm
Oh, I just noticed his patch. He's not in law enforcement. He's an EMT. It's interesting that she's using running as kind of like an escape mechanism. And yelling. Both are good.
Okay.
Wow.
Thanks for the cake.
This framing is interesting because it's yeah, so let's break this down really quickly. Yeah, okay, sweet. So like the framing here is interesting because they're framing her and the brother instead of her and the girl that she like kind of saved. So I'm wondering if they're trying to like set up like a love interest.
It's cool.
She's a very protective.
All right, bye.
She's very protective in a different way to Sam. Like she's definitely more protective in like the parental sense of things when like their mom is like overprotective, like way overprotective. And that's an important distinction too. Like one's protective and one's overprotective.
And I scared a girl off from across the room, and we had meatloaf twice, and I hate meatloaf.
2020
My mom
in
just made it.
a nutshell.
Oh, I mean, how did you scare her away?
I don't know. I've been wondering and wondering and wondering and wondering.
Okay, pretend I'm her.
I think it's kind of like an endless like cycle too, especially when we're talking from like a dating perspective, is when people ghost or when people stop talking, or especially like now with dating apps where you can talk to like a lot more people than you normally would, especially in 2020 with COVID, where pretty much all dating is online or like virtual. There is this there's definitely that frustration of like if people stop talking to you, if it was something you did, or if they just weren't vibing.
Glance away. Make eye contact again. Otherwise, it can seem scary.
Hold on.
Also, I wish that like flirting and dating was this formulaic, right? That all you have to do is this stuff and it'll work, because it's way more complex than that. But I understand why they're not bringing that up, because Sam is so literal. Just do the grin.
Tried no teeth?
The grin is my favorite, especially the no teeth. Like he needs to squint his eyes a little bit. I'm talking from a photographer's perspective too, so I'm like, I like checking what people do with their faces, especially when they try and smile.
Okay. Don't look.
Are you guys noticing kind of like the subtle hints of red around the frame? Like it's not like full blown love, right? Like red is typically the color like representational of love, but it's interesting that everything is in black, but we have like these dots of kind of like red everywhere. So it's definitely, I think maybe I'm looking too much into this, but it seems a little symbolic of like their relationship. Like the love is there, but they aren't quite getting it, or they can't find it, or it's kind of like in the shadows, but we know it's there. I agree. On a first date, probably not asking the children thing, which is why I like dating apps that let you like fill that section in. So I think for a lot of people, like children are like massive deal breakers too, right? Like people really want kids. Like I can see why like not wasting the time going out with someone just to find out they don't fit your long-term goals is there.
You are. Me too.
I like the dad.
It's really uncomfortable. Kids are great.
Oh, come on. Here we go.
In the last like 15 seconds, she's taken a lot of nervous sips of her wine.
Just dating. First it's dating, and then he's graduating, and then he's moving out into the world, and we...
Okay, so she definitely, like, we've established that she's really overprotective, but she seems to have a lot of parental anxiety, right? Like, as parents, parents never stop worrying about us, right? Like, that was one of the things that, like, my therapist talked with me a lot about, right? He's like, your parents are never going to stop worrying about you, even when you're, like, 40 and you have your own kids, right? They always worry about you. But so it doesn't seem like too far out of bounds, right, that she would be worrying about it, but the way that she's handling it, it might not be the healthiest.
There aren't possible for
How do
him.
you know?
I'm the one that's been with him.
She doesn't like a loss of control, especially considering like Sam's like situation, like she wants to have like as much control so that he can stay safe, but it's not necessarily like the best move, I think.
I mean, honestly, there's times I think you don't even like him.
Wow, this is a really hard conversation to be having in the middle of a restaurant. Like this is this is really hitting hard.
Like you, he's not like.
I think this is a really common. I'm glad they're shedding light on this and kind of using this as this is really good representation for parents, I think, in the sense that, you know, your kids aren't always going to be like either of you and your partner, and I think there's like definitely a level of grieving that happens there, right? Like you want your kids to be into the same things you're into, but when they're not, that can be really hard to process.
Hey!
It seems like Sam's sister kind of disrupts his life in like not a catastrophic way, but in like a light, like trying to just like ease him a little bit instead of like pushing him into the world, right? Like she's kind of being like cat good. Is that the right word?
Hi.
It's the brother.
There you go. It's been washed twice.
You know what's interesting in this shot? Okay, let's take a look at this shot. So it's supposed to be nighttime, right? Like they've, with everything going on, I don't know like what the reflection is in the top, which way, where's my camera? Like top right section of the frame is really bright. I think that's just a reflection, but I don't know if that's like a continuity mistake. I'm going to point things out like that because it bugs me.
Sorry, I don't really.
Wow, who do I need to punch to get a cute person to ask me on a date?
Get the hell out of this town.
Well, fair enough.
That brings up an interesting point, the track scholarship and leaving this town. I wonder how her leaving will affect Sam in the long run, right? Like if he doesn't have that like consistency with his sister around.
Named Simba. I don't love cats. Do you think she'd get rid of it?
Do not ask her that.
I am definitely allergic to cats, so that's a bummer.
Don't worry, I have a strategy.
I relate to this a lot because I have travel anxiety, so I don't like necessarily going to places I've never been before because I'm like always anxious about like just like getting from point A to point B. Once I'm there, once I'm at point B, I'm totally fine, but it's just like the traveling that gives me anxiety.
Baby, those are some serious
Why did I pause it there?
bug eyes you got.
What?
Mamacita, your ass is on
This is hard to watch.
the phone?
Yo, I'm clocking out. Can you see my nipples?
I think that's really hard. Like it's hard to watch, but it's good to kind of reflect on why it's hard to watch, right? Because it's not our norm. It's not necessarily what we as people that don't have autism in society, like that makes us uncomfortable because we're just not accustomed to that, and we just think that everyone is kind of on the norm when that's the bare assumption, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But I think this brings up a really good point with like Sam's lifestyle, and especially with like autism in general, is that like people don't like change, and even like the smallest minor fluctuations in like social interactions or in society in general make people like uncomfortable. And I think that's just because people aren't pushed or pulled away from their comfort zone as much, which I think is really representative of the fact that Sam went outside of his comfort zone, even though he needed like a little bit of a crutch with the headphones. I think that's definitely symbolic of the fact like society itself won't get out of their comfort zone and into like the coffee shop, even if they need their headphones. I don't know if he's doing this to be helpful or he's doing this because it's fun.
Laser or inkjet?
Oh, I don't know. I didn't really do any research.
Well, lucky for you, I love research, and I know all about these printers. You should get this one. The other ones are garbage and should be set on fire.
Wow, thanks.
I love the transparency. Like that's the level of transparency that I just love. Subtlety. He's like slowly learning the art of subtlety, which I'm just just like soaking this in. Smoking isn't cool, kids.
You got a date.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I threw up before my first date because I was so nervous.
You look good.
with their relationship slash marriage, I don't know why I said slash, it really just seemed like they're just trying to like patch the bridge instead of like rebuild the structure, right? Because just like patching a relationship doesn't fix like the core problems.
Sure.
She's still very much like the like cool kid in high school. Like that's the vibe I'm getting. Like that almost that she's like ashamed of Sam a little bit.
You're really honest, huh?
Yes, is that bad?
No. It's refreshing. Tell me more.
Her response to this is so healthy. Like it's so good. This is so much better than the first dating scene.
You're hilarious.
I think there's something to say about her comments about how honesty is really refreshing, and I think it feels really refreshing sometimes when people are like really honest, because we're just not used to like that level of transparency with people, right? Like most people aren't going to be super transparent about themselves and their problems, and I'm very guilty of oversharing a lot of times for things, so I can, it's definitely a fine line. I think the other thing with like any form of honesty is people tend to be more on the defensive way too much, right? Like sometimes people over process, or people think that even like the smallest criticisms are like way more massive than they are.
You never had sex?
No.
Want to?
On a first date?
Hey.
I mean,
Because most people don't stand up to assholes, but you do?
I really like this like interesting sibling dynamic that we have going on here, right? Like we have two very protective siblings that are now kind of like being smushed together in this narrative. Kind of like the who protects the protective siblings.
Wow, a month.
Stop it.
Bartenders oversharing. That's how original.
Let's talk about something else.
What? No, I want to hear about your.
Shouldn't this bartender be working? Dorm room? Is that why there's two beds?
I've never been in a dorm before. This isn't what I thought it would smell
Dorm.
Yeah. My roommate makes a lot of ramen.
Sometimes
Is she
being
college
touched
age?
makes
Is
you
she an older? What?
jump.
Go Sam.
It has to be a hard touch. Pressure. I like pressure. I don't like soft. Is that okay to say on the first date?
This definitely feels a little reminiscent of like sex education on Netflix. I don't know if any of you have seen that series, but the fact that like Otis struggles so much with self-gratification in the first season, and also just like with physical touch in general. So I'm definitely seeing kind of like the connection there here, right? Like Sam is about to dive into like something way too fast. He's about to plunge into Arctic waters without a like wetsuit. Am I gonna have to take the camera off for this section? I'm gonna, just in case.
What the hell?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
What is wrong with you? Seriously, are you retarded? Is there something wrong with your brain?
She was doing so good. She was doing so good. That's really upsetting.
Get the hell out of my room!
This is like, it does seem like a little bit of a really sudden flip on her part, right? Like she seemed really caring and understanding at first, but as soon as he rejected her with like sex, she really flipped a little bit. So I wonder if there's something going on there for her.
Sometimes when I feel most alone, I imagine myself in that ice. Frozen, unable to move, but safe.
Hey, there he is, the twat guy.
What's wrong?
Sam?
Oh, they're both there. This warms my
Hey,
heart.
dude, don't feel too bad. The first time's always a shit show. My first time was on a ping pong table and it collapsed like 2 seconds in. My balls got all wrapped up in the net, really freaked her out.
How does that happen? Like just from like a physical standpoint, how does that happen?
Nobody's normal.
That is a really good takeaway for this episode, right? Like everyone kind of has their thing going on, and physical or mental or neurological, like regardless of what people have going on, like, there isn't like a perfect person in the world. And also rejection is really hard, and this kind of circles back to his mom's comment earlier about like how do you introduce Sam to heartbreak, right? Like how do you get him to understand that? And I think the answer, it was actually done really well in this episode, was he just has to experience it firsthand, right? Like you can't, as a parent, you can protect your child as much as you want, but you can't protect them from everything. You can't protect them from pain, from sadness, from heartbreak, from all of those things, because those are necessary emotions for humans to feel, and especially to like grow as people. Like we have to feel those, even if they're like, it's like, you know, being okay with crying, and like we all have to cry sometimes, because if we don't, then everything just kind of gets worse.
In 4th grade, my biology teacher, Mr. Duraker, he was fat, said that penguins are similar to humans because once they copulate, they stay with the same partner for life.
So what about you?
I would kind of like to, I don't know, I think in like penguins and human, I think in just like animals in general, like it's more widely known that like animals don't have like one partner, and there's like very few species that actually do have like one partner for life.
Yeah.
Oh, are they setting up? I don't know if I like the fact that they're setting up like some cheating going on, especially the fact that like Sam just kind of mentioned that with his therapist.
What's your life like?
It's gonna happen, isn't it?
Ironically, when I was in college, I also dated a girl.
Like they set up the fact that her and her husband haven't been intimate at all, and Sam's comment about penguins it's definitely, this is easy foreshadowing. You can't trick me.
And
You know, she wants a younger version of her husband back. That's kind of what I'm thinking.
But according to the 2010 census, which is the most recent data I could acquire, 49% of marriages end in divorce.
They do. As a wedding photographer, I can tell you that, I mean, my couples are doing great. I think I've only had like two couples that I have photographed that are no longer together, which are really good odds, having been doing this for like 5 years. Okay, so maybe she's not gonna. That was really cool. They were definitely trying to get us to think something was setting up. This is such a cute scene here. This shot right here, because it's very reminiscent of probably what the dad envisioned, what Sam's dad kind of envisioned when he did the igloo thing, like kind of doing something like this, right? Like sitting around ice.
I wish I had a time machine. I would go back in time and never ask her out in the first place. And also maybe visit the Middle Ages, because jousting.
I don't know about some of the stuff you're into, but with girls I know about, okay?
Yeah, Sam brings up a really interesting point, right? Like when we go through heartbreak or when we deal with relationship things, a lot of people are like, I wish I hadn't even had that relationship, or I wish we hadn't even like been together. But the way I kind of view everything as like a learning experience, right? And I think more people could view what we would consider negative experiences or hard experiences or trauma as definitely a learning experience to reflect on, right? Like thinking back to my last relationship, there's so much that I think back on and I cringe, and I'm like, oh my gosh, why did I do a lot of these things? And it's things that I can think about for like the next one, right? Like the next connection that I have with somebody, I can avoid kind of like past mistakes, and you can never learn from past mistakes if you don't make them.
I should never go on another date. I should just...
The cool thing about being pushed out of our comfort zone or being pushed into situations that push us like back into our comfort zone is that we can always leave that zone at any point again, right? Like we aren't locked into our comfort zone at all times, right? Like we're happy being in our comfort zone, but like just because we like push ourselves outside of it and then we kind of like fall back into it doesn't mean we can't get back up and walk out of it again.
You want to be with someone who appreciates you for what you are, you know, who loves all the little odd things about you, who gets you.
and they don't like. I think, and Sam's that brings up such a good point here too, right? Like, being in even in like a non-romantic sense, right? Like being in like friendships or romantic relationships. You know, it's really important to remember that like humans are flawed. Everyone is flawed. You have flawed friends. Your partner is likely flawed in some ways, but it's kind of accepting those and recognizing them that allows you to not focus on them so much.
When a male Gen 2 penguin chooses a mate, he makes an offering. He finds a pebble.
Oh, don't go
often
for your
taking the
therapist,
time to
Sam.
find the smoothest one and presents it to the female. Decided I want to give you my brain
Really?
after I die.
Oh, Sam, that's so great.
I was totally expecting him to try and ask her out on a date.
You're gonna help so many people. Good smile.
Oh, he kind of is though. His offering instead of a stone is his brain.
If the female places the pebble in her nest, she accepts him as a mate. And as you already know, penguins mate for life.
Oh, Sam, honey. We're gonna not get into the next episode right away. Wow, that is how you do a first. So this episode is really interesting because it did a really good job of introducing us to. It seems like all of the main characters, like really subtly, without putting too much focus on anything, but giving us all the subtle hints about like what their relationships are kind of like what we see from like a first point of view, right? The way I'm kind of seeing each character is Sam's sister seems to be his rock, to some degree, like is the thing that is keeping him like relatively grounded or is helping him stay grounded, whereas his mom is super overprotective and she's definitely kind of a complex character from the first episode because they're kind of pulling her in a lot of different directions, which is I don't know really what to make of it yet. Other than like they're obviously having like some minor marital problems, but like every relationship has problems. It'll be really interesting to see how they work through that. I think that's more important of a focus is whether or not they get through it, but like how they get through things or how they try to get through things. And Sahid is a wild card. I think he's the social pressure for Sam, or like the things he wants to do, or the things that society expects him to do. I think he's kind of the outside third party peer pressure. So that's kind of where I'm seeing all the characters right now. I don't know where the sister and the classmate that she punched, her sister, that relationship. I don't know where like that those two siblings. Obviously they're gonna be a thing at some point. I just don't know like what context, if it's purely like hookup or if it's gonna be an actual relationship. So I'll be interested to find out. And I'll see you guys in the next one.